You are listening to the Knightline Sports Network, brought to you by Travis Dever and the Dever team, 386-690-1636.
Knightline is brought to you by the Dever team, your source for New Smyrna Beach real estate and everything else New Smyrna Beach. Go to www.thedeverteam.com and call UCF alumni Travis Dever for all your New Smyrna Beach needs. 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636.
Welcome to UCF Knightline, your source for UCF sports and former player information.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley coming to you from the 1148 studios. This is Knightline 249, if you believe that. One more till the big 250 from the award-winning Knightline Sports Network. Joining me, as always,
Roger Phipps, and on this week's show, Terry MOE HODGE ER assumes the throne. You get a coach, you get a coach, you get a coach. Somebody's getting a coach. Ben Stout goes inside the paint from the sideline. Question mark. The Tijuana Flats Hot Take of the Week, and your questions on Ask Knightline.
Alrighty, well, a big week for UCF with the hiring of Terry MOE HODGE ER as the AD. So, Roger, what are your first thoughts on that?
Well, that completely came out of the middle of nowhere. I don't think anybody was saying MOE HODGE ER's name up until this point. But a very interesting guy for sure. He's a guy that came from Arkansas State. He was there for 9 years. He did a lot of good things while he was there. He was also an alum at Arkansas State, so I think that says a lot about UCF as an opportunity for him. He seems like a really emotional guy, which was interesting. Anybody who caught his speech this week saw that come through.
I like that, by the way, because I'm an emotional guy. So
yeah,
I like that.
He really. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say he's really charismatic. I mean, you see that coming through, and it seems like he cares. And being a former player, just like you are, Andrew, it feels like he can connect with at least the football team in a different way than what Danny White could. And, he's already had conversations with the team and connected with them. And there's certainly a feeling that he's a little bit more approachable than what Danny White was in his tenure here.
Yeah, well, being a former football player, I think is a really big deal for the football team. Danny White was a former basketball player, so he kind of could see a little bit more eye to eye with the basketball players probably. Well, Terry MOE HODGE ER will see that with the football aspect of things. He was a assistant, or not an assistant, really a GA. When I played at Kansas, he was a GA there. In my sophomore year, he came on and was there. And I remember him, obviously, but I did not interact with him very much. It's not like I could go up to him and be like, "Hey, what's up, man?" We didn't have that kind of a relationship. So at some point, hopefully I'll get to talk to him and, we'll see if we remember each other's faces or whatever. He looks a lot different. It was a long time ago, 1993 through 96. So, that he was at Kansas. So very long time ago. So
did he wash your jersey?
He may have. I don't know. I believe I remember him working with the special teams on game day. And besides that, I was not really ever around him during practices and stuff. So it wasn't one of the guys. And I wasn't a guy to be chummy with my coaches anyway. I just kind of did my thing. And, when the coaches talked to me, I talked to them. I wasn't one of the guys that was trying to be best friends with my coaches. I hated my coaches. Personally. So they were just the coaches, So, and the GAs, sometimes you pay attention to those guys, sometimes you don't. So, but he obviously, he's from my area where I'm from in Kansas City. He grew up in Overland Park, Kansas. And, that's kind of a big deal to me just because I know he's a Midwest kind of guy and went to Arkansas State, worked at Kansas. I don't know. That's a big thing to me because I know kind of the way that Midwest people are. They're just a little bit different. They're very nice people. And the emotional thing to me is a really big deal. I like it when people are emotional and not afraid to show their emotions more than anything else. That's the biggest thing. You can be the toughest guy in the world and never show any emotion, or you can be the toughest guy in the world and show emotion, and I think the latter is much more genuine to me. So I appreciate that because, all of you have heard me get emotional on here. I talk about Mackenzie Milton or the Griffiths or whatever, and Griffins, I should say. Sorry. I have a lot of relation that is Griffiths. So anyway, but yeah, I think it's a great hire. I'm excited to see what he can do. He seems to have the attitude to do it. He seems to have the attitude to be able to follow a guy like Danny White. He seems to, be embracing the culture of UCF already with the Twitter videos and all kinds of stuff. And I don't know if any of y'all saw it, but did you see the little video clip of him being knighted by Nitro? I thought that was awesome. Yeah. That doesn't happen very often. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, he's known for his social media presence for sure. And to your point, with him being emotional about it, he left that job, his alma mater, after 9 years, which you're working with people for that length of time. If you're a good leader, you're developing relationships, you're watching people grow, you're invested in them. And it seemed like on both sides, his family even mentioned it, how close they were with his staff. And, Terry said that, his staff was there at any time of day. So if you've got staff that are willing to help at 1:30 in the morning when you call, that says a lot about your leadership. And some of the folks at UCF staff, actually, after their first staff meeting, talked and went out and were open on Twitter and said, wow, what a great staff meeting, super pumped, super impressed. And they didn't have to do that. So obviously he's speaking to them in some way that makes a whole lot of sense to them. And that bodes well for the long-term leadership within the UCF athletics. Scott Carr, by all accounts, is also going to be staying. He was a candidate for this job as well, as was Mark Wright. So if those guys are willing to stay, he's obviously making a good first impression for sure, and that's important for UCF.
Well, yeah, and I wouldn't see why they wouldn't. They've been around here long enough, and they know what's going on, and he needs people that know what is going on around the place as well. So he seemed very excited to be here and to be at UCF, and I think he knows and fully embraces what is going on at UCF and how he can help even more. So especially with the stuff that he did at Arkansas State, it looks like he would be in the same mindset and the same line as Danny would with the fundraising and everything else. So I think we scored big time.
Yeah, and to your point, he was very successful and at Arkansas State, which is a smaller school with not as large of a donor base as UCF has. He
probably older donors, though.
Could be. I'm not sure on that, but you're probably right because we have a very young donor base. I think the average age is something like 35. But yeah, he moved their budget from $8 million to $31 million per year in his time there, which $31 million is not anywhere near what UCF's is, but for that school is doing really well. And he also had $90 million in facilities upgrades during his tenure, $29 million of which was paid for by donors. So again, that's a huge win for a school like that to be able to get that $29 million from donors in that donor base. And he was just very engaged with the fans and social media. So a lot of them loved him. So from that perspective, if he can connect with the fan base and the donors, one of the big opportunities for us is to connect more with that younger fan base, making sure that they're giving what they can, and as they grow, to keep them connected to the school so they become larger donors later on. It truly is an investment in our future. So it sounds like he has the tools to do that and to continue that stakeholder society. So really excited about that stuff.
Yeah, I was just looking at Arkansas State, just a little bit of history, just because we were talking about that. Arkansas State University is 112 years old. Compared to UCF's 57 years old. Their endowment is a little bit less, obviously, for being a smaller place, $84 million. Central Florida, according to Wikipedia, UCF is $164.7 million, which is still not a lot. Endowments can do a lot, and I've always said from the beginning that the endowment is still very small for UCF, probably to what it should be for as large of a school that it is. So
yeah, no, I agree with that. I think a big part of that is UCF has been trading for a long time. They called it the partnership university because they would trade research patents for buildings. So when you're seeing, especially in engineering, when you see the Harris Corporation building, you see Northrop Grumman just opened up a cybersecurity center. Lockheed Martin was involved, all those, because UCF didn't have the funds to be able to build the buildings as fast as what we were growing. So I think a lot of that has to do with the endowment, but at the end of the day, you're 100% right. I'm curious, does it show what the enrollment is there at Arkansas State?
I'm sure it does. Only 13,000. So
yeah,
they're small. 8,000 undergraduates. Yeah. So one of the interesting things here, though, you know how it says they always talk about UCF being a space grant school?
Right.
Arkansas State is as well. So,
oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Very interesting there. That's what it says anyway. So,
well, they can't have our space uniforms, so hands off.
Yeah, but yeah, so cool. Interesting stuff there. You can find out all kinds of stuff if you want to do a little bit of research. I think people should do more research these days instead of just believing what everybody says. Anyway, that's another topic altogether. So tonight is the night, supposedly, or kind of becoming the night. It seems like UCF Sports' Brandon Helwig is reporting that a decision on a head coach has been made. That's what he is hearing. Someone has told him.
So popping bottles? Are we popping bottles over at UCF?
Not yet. But his statement was this. Brandon Helwig, which obviously a friend of the show, and he's been on here a million times, and blah, blah, blah. I think he was maybe even our first guest. I'm not sure. But he says at 6:55 p.m., he says a decision has been made, I'm told, trying to wrap up the process tonight so the coach can possibly fly down tomorrow. No name yet. So,
get that flight tracking software out there.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're up on that people. Whole stuff, who knows? By the time this comes out tomorrow, somebody could be named already. You never know, or it could get out. You know how this stuff gets out. Once somebody tells somebody something, I'm watching the ESPN alerts, I can tell you that. ESPN and every other news thing, because we heard that Terry Mohajir was the AD long before UCF said anything about it. On the ESPN alerts and everything else. So, interesting names, a couple of really interesting names that we really hadn't heard before. Earlier on Saturday, the update was, I gotta get to it here. There was some names that were said. Ole Miss coach Jeff Lebby, offensive coordinator. Kent State head coach Sean Lewis. University of North Carolina offensive coordinator Phil Longo. UCF interim head coach, defensive coordinator Randy Shannon, Miami offensive coordinator Rhett Lashley, and then former Auburn head coach Gus Malzahn. Then we heard of some other names that were revealed that also were involved in the process, which is interesting as well. And I got to get to that page because you got to go, page by page here to get all this information.
Well, Bill Napier was one of them, and that's University of Louisiana Lafayette's head coach. And he's an interesting one because he's turned down a few P5 jobs already to stay there. Right. So that's certainly interesting.
Yeah, supposedly as well, Carolina Panthers offensive coordinator Joe Brady. His name has been mentioned. Interesting one there. And Coastal Carolina Jamie Chadwell, sorry. Has been involved in the interviews as well. So those are interesting names. The Coastal Carolina Jamie Chadwell does not surprise me at all. The offensive coordinator from the Carolina Panthers, Joe Brady, does surprise me, though.
There's not a whole... Go ahead.
Yeah, that name hasn't ever been mentioned. And he's kind of a different guy. I was looking up his Wikipedia page. He doesn't have any head coaching experience, which doesn't surprise me at all. Anyway, I mean, you can be a coordinator. He was the offensive coordinator for LSU, the passing game coordinator and wide receivers coach during LSU's national championship in 2019, and then moved on last season with the Carolina Panthers as their offensive coordinator. So he was linebackers coach at William and Mary for a couple of years, and then at Penn State as a grad assistant for a couple of years, and then New Orleans Saints, an offensive assistant for a couple of years, then to LSU, then to Carolina Panthers. Did win the Broyles Award, top assistant award in 2019, and I'm sure that is probably what got him the Carolina Panthers job, but just kind of a weird thing.
It doesn't instill a lot of confidence for me.
Yeah, well, yeah, just these names come out of the blue, though, and we know how that works here at UCF, especially Scott Frost and Josh Heupel were two that came completely from left field that nobody reported, and then all of a sudden there they are. So you never know. I mean, I think a lot of us are really hoping that it's Jeff Lebby. I know the players are, unless their minds have changed. I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen? I can't wait. I mean, I'm literally refreshing pages and all kinds of stuff, and I'm waiting. I cannot wait to see, the future of UCF football. It's a big deal.
Yeah, the F5 button on his keyboard's getting worn out right now.
I can't push it too much because I got this recording software up here too. I don't know what F5 does in the recording software, so I can't do that. I have to manually go back and forth with my mouse and refresh stuff. I got Twitter going on here. I got all kinds of Wikipedia pages, all kinds of stuff. So
it feels like we're waiting for the Pope, and it was kind of funny because UCF social media did the white smoke for the AD, so it'll be interesting to see if they post something for the coach as well.
Yeah, there you go. I got to look at that too. I guess I haven't looked at their page yet. Oh boy.
Well, I mean, if we want to talk a little bit about those that have quote unquote been confirmed as having interviewed. We've got
Can
a little
I say
bit
something
of
real quick? Hold on here. I'm sorry. I just pulled up the UCF Twitter page, UCF Football's Twitter page, and at the very top is this place video. What an incredible freaking video! What an incredible video that was. They did it back on. It seems like so long ago. It's 10 days ago, February 4th. But that video was absolutely incredible. And I love the whole thing about this place. I love it. It's just, that video brought tears to my eyes. It did. I'm an emotional person, like I've said. There's a lot of that I missed, not being, around UCF for as many years as a lot of you have. But there's a lot of really good moments in that video. And it really shows from start to finish where UCF has come from and where it's going. I think it's awesome. So,
yeah, they did a really, really good job on that. And to be honest with you, it's an even better job of marketing, because this place was always had a negative connotation for UCF, and they've completely turned it on its head to mean that this place is special and are building a marketing brand around it. So just from that perspective alone, it's genius. And then on top of that, our video team is absolutely stellar. So when you watch this, they do a really good job with doing evocative videos. And even, every week we had this storyline that we were doing after every game during football season. I think Nightflix, and they do that really, really well. So, just watching this and Nightflix and everything else, it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, big time stuff there. All right, let's go through some of those names and talk about them.
All right, so right off the top, let's go with the quote-unquote incumbent Randy Shannon. He was rumored to have interviewed for the position, according to a lot of folks and some UCF active players' parents. They're actually holding the team together. He's been holding the team together. So he's been the one that's been there for everyone during this situation when everybody left. He's been bringing the offense and defense a lot closer together. He would definitely, if he was an actual candidate, which I don't think he is, he would need an up-and-coming OC, someone that we could grab that was Frost asked but one step below, who isn't ready for a head coaching job. One of the things with Randy, he's got a big prowess down in South Florida as far as recruiting is concerned, but there's been some high school guys that have been talking that have been saying it's really the Miami area. So there may be some restrictions there. A lot of people have been talking about whether he should be keeping his job. So hearing him and taking him seriously for a head coaching job, that's, that for me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for UCF right now.
Yeah. Well, the only way that it makes sense is if you wanted, he's already got $1 million contract. You're already paying him $1 million. So if you're really hurting for money, he's already got the $1 million contract. He's getting it either way. So, if that's an issue, then I could see that. That would be the plus to having him as the head coach. Yes, he does fairly well at recruiting, but the kind of players that he's recruited, if you don't remember, the 4 players that I don't know about all of them. Not all 4, but a couple of those players that were kicked off the team this season were recruited by him as well.
Right.
So you have to take that into account. That those were guys that he thought were good enough to come in and behave themselves and play at UCF, and some of them didn't. That would be one strike against him. And plus, he obviously didn't get along with Heupel from what we hear. And would you want to insert, who knows who he could get that wouldn't get along with him as well. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, if he's hiring somebody, they would probably get along with him as well. It's just a weird situation the way that he even got here.
Yeah.
Being installed as the defensive coordinator before your head coach is even hired? Who does that? I don't think that happens very often. Well, and it may have just bit Danny White. That may have led to, who knows, if they would have gotten along better, how UCF's last couple of seasons would have worked out versus the way that they did. So, and his defenses have been pretty stagnant as well the last couple of years, especially the end of this year. So
yeah,
not too impressive. And I would feel like the only reason to keep him on board is to, you're already spending that money. So that would be the only reason for me. Otherwise, don't let the door hit you. as far as I'm concerned. From the way, especially the defense played in the bowl game this year, I'm good with him being gone. I'll miss some of his recruits, not all of them, obviously, but next.
Yep, it'll be interesting. So then you have Knight Nation's choice, I'm going to call it that, which is Lebby, Jeff Lebby, rumored to have interviewed Saturday. Obviously, he's got play vocal about that. He knows our offense pretty well. He did well at Ole Miss. He's had exposure to a lot of hot offenses when you think about it. He's had Baylor, UCF, and Ole Miss experience. He's supposed to be calling plays at Ole Miss last year, who was the second leading offense in the SEC. And, he kind of runs, and Lane Kiffin's offense is kind of interesting because it's a hybrid between Frost and Heupel. That uses a lot of misdirection pre-snap and uses the tight end position in the middle of the field. It's still spread. It's still a speed offense, but they use a lot more misdirection, whereas with Heupel's, it was pretty straight up, and you're just trying to kill them with speed. And this offense uses a lot more misdirection. So obviously he's a contender, and he's someone that Knight Nation was wanting to hire. So.
Yeah, this is who I hope it would be, just because he knows the players that are here, except for maybe the last class. He knows everybody. He knows Dylan Gabriel already. He knows, most of the team. He knows how things work here. He's familiar with the whole entire thing. If he had to, he could keep Randy Shannon on as well. If he had to, he could also bring a couple of players or former players back with him. To work at UCF. Name Kevin Smith, for one, works with him at Ole Miss. So that would get a former Knight that is loved by, the fans and the alumni. So that would be a positive thing as well. And I would think that he would try to do that. And I think that he would put together a young, fun-loving staff, personally. I know the guy. I love the guy. He's just an all-around freaking cool guy. And I know that that's why the players love him so much. Sometimes it's good to have a coach that the players love. Sometimes it's not.
It kind of swings both ways, right? So, like, you have someone like Frost who comes in who's a player's coach, and then all of a sudden he leaves. And then you have someone who's not as much, and it seems like it hurts. So you can have too much of both, but I think I agree with you with Lebby being a good middle ground for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The biggest.
I mean, to get your players to play, there's no better way than being a player's coach. To be able to identify with your players, that is like, a huge, huge thing to be able to identify, especially now. High school players that are coming into college, from high school are different kids than they were 10 or 15 years ago. We can all see that with the millennials and everything else. Definitely different. So old school coaches don't come across the same way as these kids have been used to being treated. So I think that makes a big difference. And that's one of the reasons why you would want to keep this staff fairly young, I think, to be able to identify. So if you brought a guy like Gus Malzahn in, yes, he's, done some good things, all that, but he's an older guy. Is he going to be able to identify with the players? Just like at Kansas with Les Miles. He's an older guy. I don't think the players are really identifying with him nearly as much as they thought that they would. So,
yeah, it's interesting. The only big thing that I've heard that would be a negative for him is he was there while Briles was at Baylor, and if you remember when he first came on board, they didn't announce him as offensive coordinator until way later, just an offensive staff member. So apparently there may be some folks on the board of trustees that may have some reticence when it comes to bringing him in as head coach. So, but other than that, I think he would be my guy if I was the one that was doing the hiring. So, he's also said that he has a staff that he could put together and bring together right away. So, I think there's a lot of
names
positives.
are starting to come out a little bit over the dungeon. There's some things that are starting to come out. This is interesting. So, speaking of Jeff Lebby, I'm going to go ahead and say this because if you're a real UCF fan, you're probably on the dungeon at this point anyway, looking at this stuff. I know the dungeon probably in this whole thing. I remember seeing on Twitter the other day, okay, I'm joining. I'm finally joining. I'm joining. It's $100 to join on to UCFsports.com. And there's a lot of people on there, but there's a lot of people that weren't that I think are now. There was a big conversation on Twitter the other night about joining. Anyway, so if you're in there and you're seeing this anyway, so the Rivals site on the Ole Miss Rivals site, which is comparable to UCFsports.com, just not as good, obviously, is reporting that they are hearing that it is that Jeff Lebby wanted the job, but it's not Jeff Lebby. So it'll be interesting to see what's smoke and what's not, because we've seen this a couple times. Since I've been here 3 or 4 times, I guess now 3 times. So we'll see what's smoke. Brandon also says on there, I also heard in the last 15 minutes that it's not Jeff Lebby. The final 2 were supposedly Gus Malzahn and Lebby, if one source is correct, he says it. So,
yeah, and he just posted again and said 247 is saying Gus as well.
Holy Moses. Okay, well, that goes back to what I was just talking about then. If it's Gus Malzahn, interesting. I don't know how I feel about that.
I know how I feel about it. I don't want Gus Malzahn as my head coach. I hate to say that way, but I just don't. For me, I don't think he's the right person to lead this program at this time. We won't know why a decision.
Okay, let's do a little devil's advocate here.
Okay.
He has had, I guess, since he's not currently a head coach, his offenses have been pretty exciting. He's been around. He's done this before. He knows a lot about UCF because UCF beat him in that Peach Bowl. So he's definitely familiar with UCF. Interesting the amount of money that we may have to pay this guy, though. Although he's getting a huge buyout because he got fired, so he's probably willing to take a lot less for this job if that happens. He has been in the game for quite a while. He knows a lot of people. He can get a good staff coming on. Then that makes me think, is Randy Shannon still going to be there? I don't know.
Well, here's another interesting tie. Gus Malzahn was the head football coach at Arkansas State University.
Right. When
2012.
When Timo first got there. So, okay. Well, it says, did you say already about the 24/7 report?
Yes.
So Jason Beatty, our friend, as well, is reporting that an offer has been made to Gus. And yeah, so there's been a lot of smoke, Brandon says, about Gus. Nothing is confirmed, at least not good enough for me to run with, is what Brandon is saying on UCFsports.com. So, wow, see, this is fluid. I wish this was live because this would be a lot more fun if it was live, because you're going to hear this later on after it's 8:33 p.m., and this isn't going to come out until 5 o'clock in the morning. So maybe I'll release this one real time tonight. Maybe this one will come out as soon as we're done, just in case. So, yeah, well, you're hearing it as we're reading it on the dungeon or, anywhere else.
And just to be clear, we don't get all our news from here.
No. But it's the thing that Brandon is very knowledgeable and he, reports good stuff, and he doesn't report a bunch of crap. So,
and he's very well connected because he's been doing it since the early 2000s.
I mean, there's nobody that knows more, and I'll say it, there is nobody that knows more about UCF football than Brandon Helwig. There is no one. So he's been doing it for a long time, knows a lot of people, so...
Well, if we want to talk a little bit about his offense, too, Gus's offense, believe it or not, there's a tie-in there with Rhett Lashley as well, because Rhett Lashley followed Gus Malzahn around quite a bit. He runs an up-tempo. He doesn't use his tight ends as much. He's more 11 personnel. He uses his H-backs quite a bit. You saw that in our bowl game. And he used trips. He uses a lot of trips packages to create some diversions. He flexes his H-back quite a bit and uses split zone and bootlegs. So essentially, he's using his H-back as almost a hybrid, where the H-back will catch the ball, or when he's running the ball, he'll hit those zone reads. So they're basically trying to create lanes, but they're staggered lanes within the offensive line. And then they're using the quarterback to they'll also use that to set up a shift to one side of the field and then run a naked bootleg or something like that with your quarterback to find someone in space that's on his side of the field. So it's a little bit different than what we're used to seeing. I personally like our 21 packages more, but that sounds like he's going to be looking for bigger backs, and we do have a few on the team now. So it'll be interesting to see if it's Gus, man.
Yeah. He runs the hurry up and it's fast and all that stuff. So that's what he's kind of been known for, doing that. He's got a great record. I mean, really, 77 and 38 in college. That's not a bad record.
2-5 in bowls, though, including a loss to UCF.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess that kind of is what it is. But the guy definitely knows what he's doing. He's been around quite a bit. He was also he's worked for Tulsa in 2007 through 2007-2008. He was the offensive coordinator, I believe, at and quarterbacks coach at Tulsa. So he's familiar with UCF as far as that goes too, because we've been in the same conference with them for quite a while, I believe. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. He's a name. He's a big name, obviously. I mean, he was an SEC head coach just this last season. So.
What's interesting was he was telling everybody recently that he was, sitting this one out and taking some time off, which obviously he can afford to do with a $21 million buyout. But, he was basically forced out at Auburn, and he wasn't very happy about that. So,
he had a winning season. It's not like he had a losing season. I don't think he ever had a losing season there. I mean, let's see. 2015, 7-6. So let's just go down the line here. Arkansas State in 2012. This is his records as a head coach. Arkansas State 9-3. Then he moved to Auburn. First year at Auburn 12-2. Second year at Auburn 8-5. 7-6 the third year. 8-5. 10-4. Went to the Peach Bowl. That's when we beat him. Then 8-5, 9-4 in 2019, and 6-4 in 2020. Was in the Citrus Bowl, lost that game, but he didn't coach in that game this year. But that would be first in the SEC his first year, fourth in I guess this is the conference. First in the conference, went to the BCS National Championship game. Fourth in the Western, seventh in the Western, second in the Western, first in the Western, fifth in the Western, third in the Western, and third in the Western. So third in the Western division of the SEC last year, and he gets fired at 6-4. So
well, they have some very, very big time boosters over there that spend a lot of money.
No, I understand that. It's the
and
SEC. I mean, I think everybody pretty much knows that.
Yeah, and they wanted him replaced with Kevin Steele, and then their AD, who was looking at us, we were looking at for AD as well here, Green, was basically forced or was trying to be forced out by those same boosters as well. So a school like Auburn that with that kind of boosters pushing their weight around, it's tough to coach there, and it's tough to build a successful program.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So his record there, though, at Auburn was 68-35. It's pretty good. 68-35. In the SEC, 39-27. So not horrible.
And that's playing Bama every year.
Yep.
And Georgia.
Yep.
And I think LSU was in their conference or in their division as well.
The Western. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So, I mean, man, I think a lot of people are going to melt down about this. This will be an interesting couple of days if that's the case. I think there's going to be a lot of meltdown. Our friend Ben Stout ran a poll on Twitter the other day, kind of predicting this in a way. What if it was? And a lot of people were not happy, would not be happy, and they voted that they did not want him. So, yeah, the West Division of the SEC, Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, LSU, Mississippi State, and Texas A&M. So, a lot of pretty good football teams in there, I would say.
Yeah, so. It'll be, to your point, it'll be real interesting to see what the reaction is. And you kind of called this in the last, when we did the podcast and the radio show, which is, what is this going to look like for expectations if it's not Jeff Lebby? And for me, the big thing, too, when you're looking at this, Terry's basically making a decision that to continue down the path that we have been, which is get a hot, young offensive coordinator, put him into the driver's seat, and let him continue to be that brash brand that we have been, throwing up yards all over the place? Or do you bring in a more steady hand and try to keep that person for a little bit of the long term? I think that's what you're looking at in between these two guys. And if they did choose Gus, I'm guessing they chose stability. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. How Knight Nation reacts to this hire. I mean, and quite frankly, with all of the inertia around Lebby, it's not fair to Gus either if he does walk into that situation. And he's dealing with everybody already being upset or disappointed just because it wasn't Lebby who everybody was excited about.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you by reading the comments on that it could be Gus Malzahn. People aren't happy. I can tell you that right now. Some are, some aren't. It's not 50-50, I can tell you that. But there are some people that are happy with it. And I mean, man, there are some good things about it. If he is, like we said, there's some bad things about it as well. Like I was saying, before, he's an older guy and all that, and the players really, really were pumped and wanted Jeff Lebby. So, interesting. Any coaching change, by the way, no matter who it was, some players aren't going to be happy. Always. Every time. Somebody's not going to be happy.
Did you ever experience one while you were playing?
I did not. So I was lucky to have the same guy the entire time. So, yeah.
Well, the average coach, FBS coach, I found this statistic in preparation for the show, 3.5 years that they stay at their current position. So on average, if you sign as a high school prospect and you commit to a school, your coach is going to be gone by the time if you stayed the full 4 years.
Yeah. Yep. Wow. So, yeah, interesting. Very, very.
Do we even want to talk about the other guys at this point, or do we just want to ride with this?
I don't know. I don't know.
We can at least
kind of
name
moving
them,
fast while we're talking about it. So, very, very, very interesting. My head coach was Glenn Mason, by the way, who was an older kind of guy. And he left after my senior year. So he was there from 1988 to 96. So, yeah, no, I never went through a coaching experience.
Well, it's
like
definitely
that.
different, right? That nowadays the coaches don't stay nearly as long. Either they move up or out, or they don't have as long of a leash to win either. I mean, that's completely different than it was back in that time frame when we were playing football.
I think the young guys move around obviously a little bit more than the older guys do. I think that's a thing with younger people anyway, to do that, I mean, Gus Malzahn was at, how many years was it here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 years he was the head coach at Auburn. So it sounds like, that's quite a long time. I mean, that's the SEC. I don't know where you're moving up to unless you're moving up to Alabama. Or, I don't know, from Auburn, maybe Georgia, or
Georgia. I don't think you could. I don't think
Florida.
anybody pick.
I'd hate to say. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Georgia, Florida, obviously Alabama would be a move up. LSU, I think, would be a move up. Yeah, I think that's. There's not very many other schools. South Carolina wouldn't consider a move up. Arkansas, definitely not. Although I think Gus was at Arkansas at some point too. So, it's
He played at Arkansas. Played at Arkansas and then at Henderson State. I don't know. Wide receiver. He was a wide receiver. He's 55, so he's not that much older, I guess. He's younger than I thought he was. I thought he was older than that.
I wonder how that sounds about what George O'Leary's age was when he jumped on board with UCF too.
And look at how long he was here. So maybe if Gus Malzahn is the guy, maybe because he's been there and done that, and if he does a good job here and runs the program well, and the program succeeds under him, I'm sure that he can do some recruiting as well. You know what I'm saying? He's Gus Malzahn. People know who Gus Malzahn is. High school players know for sure who Gus Malzahn is. He was just the head coach of Auburn last year.
The biggest question, I guess, for me is just, does this mark a different trajectory for the program from a branding perspective, right? So we've been young, brash, in your face.
But yes, just the last couple of years, but before that they weren't for forever. UCF wasn't because they had George O'Leary for years.
I think everybody's bought into that. That's what I'm saying. I think that's why Danny White had that success, is because of that. So the question is, like going back to what we were saying before,
people that aren't really big college football fans really care about who the head coach is if they win? Or is it just us that are like invested in it and like really, break down stuff and look at every little thing? Does the average college football fan, and some of the donors and some of the donors for UCF didn't even go to UCF. They're not alumni. Some of the biggest ones aren't alumni. So does it really matter to the average person? I'm not necessarily talking about those donors, and I think the donors would probably be really on board with Gus, to be honest with you.
I think they'd be okay with Gus.
I'm talking about the big donors.
The question is, can he connect with the younger student population?
And I already said that. That was like my first thing when we got to Gus. I mentioned him because I didn't think that they could, but he's only 55. I thought he was older than that. I thought he was 65 or something, you know?
Well, don't tell Gus that.
A little bit of a difference. I don't know. It would be interesting to see the Auburn player, to see what they say about Gus Malzahn. Or, Auburn fans. So maybe we'll have to get an Auburn fan or somebody involved in media or something else, or a former Auburn player or something. I do know a guy. I have a really good friend. His name's Rusty. That is a huge Auburn fan. And I really haven't talked to him since we beat Auburn in the Peach Bowl. Very much.
Coincidence?
Yeah, it was kind of a coincidence, I think. So I may have to talk to him and see what he'll probably be my first person I reach out to, just to see. You walk into this guy's house and he's got Auburn stuff everywhere. So,
well, it's interesting, as we kind of grow as a fan base and whatnot. I was actually on a Zoom call the other day with a vendor, and the guy was a big Nebraska fan, and he was like, well, you guys are a better program than we are right now. So it was very interesting to hear his perspective.
Well, it's true.
And he says that he thinks that Frost has a shorter leash, at least a leash within the program, than most people on the outside of the program think. So it was interesting to hear his perspective on, they definitely know who UCF is and where they think their program is versus where our program is.
Yeah. So, All right. Well, there hasn't been too many more updates as far as that. And I have to open up 24/7, I guess, too now. I'm doing a lot of refreshing and stuff.
Live and breaking.
Yeah. While I'm trying to do this show here. So if you hear a bunch of clicking in the background and like me sighing every once in a while, that's probably what's happening. I don't even know if I have a membership to 24/7. I used to. All right, well, I guess I'm in. So,
well, while you're doing that, the other names that were being thrown around.
Go ahead and run through them, I guess, real quick. Who knows if it matters anymore?
Yeah, well, at least we'll know who was in the running.
Going through a show, and we were going to do this, we were going to do that, and then all this comes up, So it's how the real world goes in 2021, I guess. It goes pretty quickly.
Yeah, I actually watched film on all of these guys today too. So
did you really? You went back and found
I actually
stuff?
went through and pulled clips for all of them to see what their offenses look like.
That's crazy.
So the other one is the next one that was on my list was Philip Longo. He's the current offensive coordinator for UNC. He did have the most prolific offense in the FCS with his first stop at Sam Houston State. So he was the leader in FCS. Then he went to Ole Miss and he was the offensive coordinator there. He averaged 500 yards per game at Ole Miss, which was saying a lot back then. Although the reason he wasn't there any longer was because of red zone. They weren't doing well in the red zone and to get the big win. He's a Mike Leach disciple, so another air raid guy with a mix of runs. And he's done a good job. The big thing for him that he's done at UNC that's made him successful, he's been able to roll in run plays at a more heavy rate than you would normally see at an air raid style school, and he's done that successfully. So multiple 1,000-yard rushers, and seems to have done a really good job with that style of offense. But again, up-tempo air raid type of offense. Next, I had Rhett Lashley. He was a former Arkansas Razorbacks coach. He backed up He backed up Matt Jones when he was there as a quarterback. He worked under Gus Malzahn his entire career except for 1 year at Samford. He was the OC at Samford, improved their points per game and total offensive rankings substantially nationally, and then basically switched their entire offensive scheme to a high-tempo offense. Then he followed Gus to Arkansas State as offensive coordinator, and then went and followed him again to Auburn He was a finalist for the Broyles Award in 2013. While he was at Auburn, he spent a year as OC at UConn in 2017. And then he was at SMU from 2018 to 2019 with some very successful teams. Again, running that spread air raid style offense there. So he's had a lot of success with that style of offense and speed and tempo. And again, all of these guys have run a tempo offense with a quasi air raid type of offense. Last year he spent in Miami. He had Derek King running again that air raid style up tempo offense. For him, he took some of the stuff, especially the H-back and trips formations that we were talking about earlier from Gus Malzahn and brought it to Miami. So he wasn't there long enough to really see, and their offensive line wasn't anything to write home about to see whether he was a guy that was doing it because of Derek King there, but his past at SMU and other places was highly successful. And then the last one I had on here was Sean Lewis. He's the head coach at Kent State. I really didn't take him seriously yet because he hasn't had as much experience as some of the other guys. But he's come up through the ranks. He was co-offensive coordinator at Bowling Green, and then under Dino, and he was at Syracuse as co-offensive coordinator from 2016 to 2017. So he spent about 6 years under Dino Babers and runs Dino Babers' up-tempo offense. Then he went to Kent State as head coach. He started as 2-10, then 7-6 with a Frisco Bowl win, and then last year 3-1. But it was cut short by COVID because the MAC stopped playing. He ranked fourth nationally in plays per game in 2019, which was our last full season at 84. So he goes fast just like we do. But he has the ability. He also showed in some of the games that he has the ability to slow down and chew up the clock. He's got a lot of edge blocking schemes, and they're key in this offense. And, the interesting thing is he doesn't have a lot of recruiting experience at the higher levels. So that would be the big knock on him. Those were the contenders that we knew had interviewed for the position. Malzahn had been rumored to, obviously, and Bill Napier had also been rumored to be a opportunity there with the other two that you mentioned earlier. Clearly, Malzahn did interview, and there's a lot of smoke out there that he might be the one.
Yeah, there's a lot of smoke. So maybe it's just smoke. You never know. That we could spend a lot of time talking about Gus Malzahn and it not be him, and it all be smoke. So we're kind of screwed either way here, in a way.
Did you see anything else on 247 that kind of jumped out at you?
I didn't see anything on there. I'm looking through Twitter right now. I know there's a lot of people that are kind of starting to hear this. And there's not a lot of happiness about that. Oh boy. So I mean, there's some people that have some, some I don't know. There's some people that are excited about it, but there's a lot of people that aren't. So.
I will say this. I think a major point that people have to remember too. He just got paid $21 million. It's the same thing that happened with kind of with Randy Shannon, where we got him on a discount because he was paid out by University of Florida. Except Florida had fired him, and they had some different buyout language in there, but he just got paid $21 million. So if we needed to get him on a cheaper rate than he would normally command on the market, with our new AD at Arkansas State, and they're aware of each other, there is something to be said. We were at a $12 million loss. We've got $6 million in buyout money that's coming back to us. So if we can get him on the cheap and on an escalating contract to get us through COVID, that may have played a factor into this.
Yeah. Well, interesting. Yeah, there's some people that are melting down because they think that he's the guy. Oh, well, I mean, these people that are making these decisions are making these decisions for a reason. There's got to be some kind of reason that they wanted him. The Tennessee fans really wanted him, I can tell you that, because if you look up hashtag Gus Malzahn, there was a lot of people from Tennessee before they hired Lebby. He was the guy, supposedly. That's who they all wanted.
Well, speaking of Tennessee, Josh Heupel took some coaches with him from our staff.
Yeah.
So
that's not
took
shocking.
Alex Golish, our offensive coordinator, Joey Hazel, Glenn Ellerby. And at the end of the day, none of these coaches, especially assistants, when a head coach leaves, none of their jobs they're all in jeopardy. Most of them are not going to stay on because a new head coach is going to want to bring their own staffs in. So I don't blame them one bit for moving on if Josh Heupel moved on, if they could jump on that board.
Here's a Twitter thing that I like, and I'm not going to mention the person's name, but they say, "Dear Knight Nation, please do not throw a massive fit if it's Malzahn. I know he's not who you wanted, but he's still a massive get. His players had loved him. He's had a lot of success. Jeff Lebby was not the only coach in the world capable of winning at UCF." I kind of like that one. But this is real time right here, man. This is incredible.
I feel like we should have like a little ticker or something in the background.
I'm waiting. I'm waiting for ESPN to report it or one of those sports things, that always report stuff before it's actually told to us by UCF.
Right.
Kind of like Scott Frost leaving, how we all were at the stadium, all excited, and we get that text and we're like, what the,
Oh, I think anybody who saw him come off with a red shirt under his suit knew what was going to happen.
It was a red tie, wasn't it? Or no, it was a checkered,
checkered red and white shirt.
Yeah. Oh boy, this is interesting. We may have to. I don't know what we'll have to do here. I love this stuff, though. I love this kind of stuff. This makes sports exciting. It does. I'm kind of speechless. It's
well, what we could do, if we want to, is we could keep moving on the show, keep hitting the F5
We should probably.
button.
We're in an hour already. We need to take a break. Let's do that, and we'll gather ourselves a little bit here and try to make a little bit more sense. Do a little bit of refreshing and see what we can find out. We'll be back in a minute.
Dude,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I'm looking at the UCFsports.com, and one of the threads that's on here, I haven't read more than 3 posts, and goes from 3 to 5 pages worth of threads. So this is already burning like wildfire.
Yeah, it is on Twitter too. All right, let's take a break. We'll be right back on Knightline.
Hey, this is Travis Dever, Kai's Real Estate, the Dever team, New Smyrna Beach. Your source for real estate and everything else, New Smyrna Beach. Proud sponsor of Knightline. Call me anytime at 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636. Let me show you my hometown, New Smyrna Beach, UCF's favorite beach. Go Knights and charge on.
An auto accident can change your life forever. At Chad Barr Law, we are raising the bar on what to expect from your personal injury attorney. Hi, I'm Chad Barr, and I want you to know that our entire team is dedicated to providing you with the representation you deserve in your greatest time of need. If you or a loved one have been injured in an auto accident, call 407-599-9036 for a free consultation or visit chadbarlaw.com. At Chad Barr Law, our clients come to us in need and leave as family. Offices, Altamont Springs.
Looking for more out of your Porsche? Look no further than Flat6Motorsports.com. They have the widest selection of aftermarket Porsche parts anywhere in the world. With over 85 product lines and in-depth expertise, Flat6Motorsports.com is your one-stop shop for any Porsche performance needs. Whether you're shopping for intakes, exhausts, suspension, or tuning, they have you covered. Flat6Motorsports.com is the premier Porsche aftermarket specialist. Check them out at Flat6Motorsports.com. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Knightline's own 7-footer, Ben Big Social Stout, and Inside the Paint. All right, welcome back, Ben Stout. Ben, you had a heck of a week last week, and you got a little bit of TV time in.
Yeah, it was quite the week, to say the least. Got a phone call on Tuesday evening from the voice of the Knights, Mark Daniels, and he runs the UCF production crew over there for the ESPN Plus games, and it just happened to work out where their color commentator that they had set up for the Friday night game, UCF versus Tulane, wasn't able to do that on Friday night. He had a conflict and just wasn't able to do it. So unfortunately for him, he wasn't able to do it. But I guess fortunately for me, my name got kind of thrown out there in the mix to be the color analyst on the ESPN Plus broadcast, and they asked me if I'd like to do it. I, immediately said yes, and it was a whirlwind half a week up until that occurred on Friday night. But it was a lot of fun. It was quite the rush, something I never expected to be doing at this point. Certainly didn't start the week expecting it, but it was a lot of fun, and for it to happen, to be able to be on the broadcast for a pretty exciting game, especially in the second half, and then be able to get the Knights to pull it out there. It was just a cherry on top there to a really fun night for me. It was quite the opportunity.
Well, you did a great job. I mean, that is not an easy thing to do. You were very well prepped and everything else. So congratulations, my friend, and you did us all well with your ability out there. It made it interesting to watch because I knew the voice, obviously, and you just did an awesome job. So I was very proud.
Well, I appreciate that, Andrew, and Roger as well. Appreciate all the support. I had a lot of text messages from friends. You guys were included in that, and it was just the amount of support that not only from some of the text messages that I got from family and friends, but just all over Twitter from Knight Nation. Just everybody, they UCF basketball kind of posted that thing on Twitter in the beginning of the morning on Friday, just kind of announcing that I'd be on the broadcast, and it was just the outpouring of support that I got was just really cool to see. It just made the day that much more special for me, and so want to say I appreciate you guys and appreciate everybody who reached out to me that day and since. So it was pretty fun, really fun actually.
Well, hopefully that means you get to do it again. I enjoyed your call for sure. I was actually commenting off air with Andrew. I was like, I don't know who did all the prep work because I know how much prep work you do. So I was like, I don't know if he's got like a book or like multi-chapter book, or if it's just the SID that gives him all that stuff. But you were Johnny on the spot with the commentary on top of the normal banter that was going back and forth. So I was very impressed with that. Andrew and I were also talking. I actually have a question for you on this. When you do these coaches interviews beforehand, how does that go? Is it you asking them questions, or are they just kind of throwing information out at you?
No, it is us asking questions. I mean, luckily I'm on the broadcast with a guy in Austin Lyon who is a true pro. He's a local guy. Worked for the Sentinel for a lot of years, has done these broadcasts before in many different levels of capacity. And so, working with Austin was great. He definitely helped me throughout the week and certainly throughout the broadcast. But that's how they work. They essentially the SIDs at each school essentially set up the broadcast or set up that interview. And on Thursday afternoon, Austin and I were on the call or on a Zoom call with Ron Hunter, the Tulane coach. And man, you want to talk about a charismatic guy. He was great to speak to. But yeah, we got him going a little bit, just kind of asking him about not only how his team's doing at that point in the season, but what do you see in this upcoming matchup? And so you really kind of ask some questions, especially early on, that are really open-ended, and you get them open up a little bit and, talk about their team, and they can get going for a little while. And so, but each of those interviews, we did the one with Coach Dawkins at 3:00 on Friday, and they last about 20 minutes or so at the most, because these coaches are so busy with their prep work. And but really gave us some good nuggets that we could use on the broadcast, and just good insights to their team in general, and kind of the state of mind and what they're going through as a team. And I thought that Tulane's basketball team, just learning more about them throughout the week, and I was trying to prep for the game. They just have an interesting story this year, with not only the amount of youth that they had, but the transfers that they had. But then they got really hit with COVID bad. I mean, we think that it's pretty bad what happened at UCF, and certainly it is, with their 2 long layoffs that UCF had earlier this year. But, Ron Hunter himself got seriously sick with COVID, and so he wasn't even able to coach his team or be around his team for a few weeks there. And he was not only having to be separated from a team, but recovering from a very serious illness. So it's just an interesting story, and it was great to kind of get another perspective from the coach there. And he even told us some things like that he's dressing out. He did dress out a manager on their team, and that he might have even put him in, or he was thinking about putting him in the UCF game. So the SID's on the Zoom call there. So, we all of a sudden he's scrambling to try to get some information about that, to make up graphics or something if he does actually get in the game. So seeing those kind of behind the scenes stuff was just really neat. Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's do a quick recap of that game, I guess, because we had 2 games in between the last time we talked to you. What can you tell us about that game? I mean, they pulled it out, which was great to have them win that game.
Yeah, that was a game that we've actually had even 3 games, which is crazy. So Wichita. I mean, that's the way this back half of the schedule is going to be. Every week that we talk, we're going to be probably talking about 3 games for the next few weeks.
Talk about that Wichita State game, because that was pretty big.
It was
pretty frustrating.
Yeah, it's another heartbreaker against a team that, as we've talked about numerous times before, especially when we lost to them a couple weeks ago in overtime. I mean, that's a team that we have not beaten before as a basketball program. We haven't beaten Wichita State before, and we were right there in both games with them this year. And Wednesday at home was no different. Darius Perry just had a phenomenal game. I mean, he was the storyline of the game. He had a career high 27 points. His 3-point shot was on. He was driving the lane and creating for his teammates. He had 5 assists in the game as well. It was just a great game to see him get going. He had 2 assists in that game, but he was still creating for his teammates. But 27 points, and then at the end it looks like kind of in the last minute that it's going to come down to this free throw shooting game. We were down by about 6. Looked like in the last minute that it was going to come down to us starting to foul. But we got a couple of steals, including this kind of crazy play that Darius Perry jumped in front of a guy right after he scored a basket, kind of jumped in front of a guy, was able to tip it off of his leg and get out of bounds. And they reviewed it for a second, and we got a chance there with down 1 to go ahead and with about 10, 15 seconds left to go ahead and try to score a bucket to win the game. And quite frankly, I'll give not only Darius Perry credit, but I'll give Johnny Dawkins credit that he, drew it up in the timeout. That, for the most part, we're going to go with the hot hand in that situation in some sort of isolation, whether it be Brandon Mahan or in this case, it was Darius Perry. But to execute that play sometimes doesn't go as well as you think. But in this case, it did. He was able to catch the ball, rip through, kind of take his man into the middle of the lane, just short of the free throw line. And he put up a pretty good look with a couple seconds left. It just unfortunately didn't fall. And we lost another heartbreaker against Wichita State. You know, both games that we lost this week, and I know we're going to talk about today's game in a second, but both games that we lost this week were by 1 point. And all three games, I think that we not only showed a lot of poise as a team, but, you know, showed a lot of grit and effort and fight. Just unfortunately, two of those three games just didn't work out for us on the scoreboard at the end. Just couldn't quite make enough shots as a team to bring it into, you know, a victory for us. But, you know, Brandon Mahan goes 2 for 11 in that game. Who knows how bad his ankle was in that Wichita State game that kept him out of the Tulane game. So just some weird things that were happening with our team over the course of the last week that unfortunately wound up only getting one victory when we were right there in all three games.
Absolutely right there in all three games.
Yeah.
So how big of a loss was it to not have him on for the Tulane game on Friday night?
Yeah, to not have Brandon was a surprise to me. I didn't even, you know, you always think that you kind of think in the back of your head that, you know, these players are always playing through some sort of nagging injury, right? But to find out on that call with Coach Dawkins at 3:00, you know, right before I was about to get ready to go to the arena myself, to find out he threw it in there at the last second of our call, just said, "Hey, I just want to let you guys know that Brandon is more than likely not going to play tonight. He'll be a bit of a game time decision. He's in treatment right now." And so yeah, it's unfortunate that he wasn't able to play. And I was a little bit worried driving to the arena that this was going to be a tough game for UCF. Luckily I knew that Darius Perry was coming off, you know, 3 really good games in his career high with, you know, for against Wichita State. So I knew that he was going to be the focal point, not only on the broadcast, but just in the game as well. And he actually wasn't the star of the show in the first half. It was a guy in Darren Green Jr. that had kind of disappeared lately. He had, going into that game in his last 5, he had averaged 22% from the 3-point line going into the Tulane game. And I'll give not only him a lot of credit because he missed his first 3-pointer, and I was like, oh no, is this going to kind of go downhill for him again? I'll not only give him a lot of credit because he hit about 5 threes from that point on in the first half alone. But I really like the game plan that the coaching staff put forward, especially in the early part of that game, where they were getting it inside to Jameel Reynolds or getting it inside to Avery Diggs when he was in the game, or CJ Walker. They were just making sure that they got the ball inside first, and if they were in good position, they would put it up, but, you know, making sure that they were playing inside out. So you kind of suck in that zone defense and you kick it out to Darren Green, who's more wide open. He kind of catches the ball in front of him. He doesn't have to turn into his shot. He just sets his feet and lets it fly. I think that really worked out well for them, especially in the first half. And then Darius Perry just came on really strong in the second half, started, you know, really being the playmaker that he is. And we were able to pull it out. It was back and forth the entire game. We were down by 1 at the half, I believe, if I remember correctly. Kind of back and forth for the entire second half. There was like some runs that Tulane would go on and then some runs that we would go on. But in the end, they stayed poised down the stretch, both on the defensive end and made some plays on the offensive end that just kept us ahead. So it was fun. It was a lot of fun for me on the night, obviously being there courtside and doing that for the first time. But like I said earlier, it was cool to get the win in that first opportunity for me.
Yeah, it was a very interesting game. I mean, the first half of that game with Green being on fire and then no fouls called against Tulane in the entire first half. I was like, what is going on here? And then when they went on some of those runs, you know, we have a tendency to go on scoring droughts. But the interesting thing to me is, and what you've seen probably in the last 5 or 6 games, and I'd love for you to talk about this a little bit more, is we don't look lost in the last 2 minutes of the game. So you mentioned, the last 3 or 4 games, and Andrew mentioned that we've had really, really close games, and we're in every single one. I mean, 1 single-digit games. So what's different, or what are you noticing that they're doing differently now that's allowing us to stay in those close games? Because before, they would just fall apart.
Yeah, I think it's 2 things. One, maybe a little bit less of an emphasis on this one, but certainly very important, is I think that they're tightening up and locking down on defense and making sure that that's a priority and that's important to them down the stretch. They're not losing sight of it, is what I'm trying to say. They're not so focused on what they need to do offensively to either put the ball in the basket or just get good, crisp passes, but they're making sure that once they are on the defensive end, that they're making smart plays on that end as well. I mean, you saw it in the Tulane game. I highlighted at the end of the game where Sean Mobley was, caught on one of their best players in Jalen Forbes. I mean, probably is their top scorer, and he's probably the best 3-point shooter that they have, especially with a hand in his face. And instead of trying to go crazy and try to jump up and block his 3-point shot or do too much, I mean, he just really just made sure he stood, hands straight up and kind of made sure he didn't foul. And those are just smart, nuanced defensive plays that I think are great. But then number 2, and it's a little bit more obvious one, but it's certainly important, is the evolution of Darius Perry. I mean, just how comfortable he is with this offense and with this team, how his confidence has grown, and not only his own ability, but the ability of his teammates and his confidence in his teammates. We have a primary ball handler down the stretch that we know we can count on to make the right play. And I think that was no more evident in the last 3 games that we've played. I mean, he was able to kind of just take over and, gain the confidence of his teammates in him and make the right play. And that was missing early on. I mean, not only with him trying to get going with this team, he was injured early in the season, but I just think the starts and stops, just the chemistry, I think that all of that's starting to come together, and we're just seeing more evidence of that with the poise that they've showed in late game situations. Just as I've said, 2 of those didn't work out this week, but certainly you saw the poise in general down the stretch in all 3 games.
All right, well, let's move on to today's game against Cincinnati. Brandon Mahan was definitely back, and it seemed like the rest did him some good because he came out and scored 21 points.
Yeah, he certainly did. I mean, he came out firing. He left no doubt that at least whatever treatment he got over the last week when he was out of the Tulane game certainly helped him out, and that rest helped him out because he left no doubt right away. I mean, he hit a few threes there in the first half that were just, great shots. One falling away with about 30 seconds left in the first half, just falling out of bounds there on the right side of the court there, right baseline, and he nailed that one. That was to get us within 1 at the break, and yeah, so he definitely stepped up huge. Unfortunately, outside of him, and I'll give a lot of credit to C.J. Walker. I think C.J. Walker played a fantastic game, had 12 points, but also 10 rebounds, a couple of steals. He was kind of all over the place on both ends of the floor, getting some offensive rebounds and putbacks, along with a couple of great dunks that he caught some alley-oops for. C.J. Walker probably had his best game of the year against Cincinnati. And Darius Perry had a pretty good game as well, 17 points, nothing to sneeze at. He just didn't look as, I guess Darius wasn't, it wasn't popping out to you that Darius was doing a whole lot this game like he was against Wichita State, for instance, but certainly played a really solid game. But unfortunately, outside of those 3 guys, there were some key moments, especially from behind the arc. But outside of those 3 guys in general, there were some key moments that we just couldn't quite get some critical shots to fall. I mean, Darren Green, unfortunately, after a spectacular game on Friday night against Tulane, he kind of goes back into the shadows. He was 0 for 5, 0 for 3, 0 for 3 from the 3-point line. Just had another unfortunate night from shooting from his perspective. And so hopefully he can bounce back quickly. But overall, I would sum up the UCF game against Cincinnati today as one that we saw some spectacular effort out of UCF. Really both teams. Great defensive plays, and for the most part, UCF took care of the ball very well. Only had 8 turnovers on a game, which is well below their average. But unfortunately, when it came down to it, we just missed some critical shots. Some of those were layups. Just missed some critical shots when we really could have either pulled away or chipped away at a run that they were making, and we fell 1 point short of trying to take on Cincinnati and try to complete the sweep and beating them twice this year. It just didn't work out for us. I mean, really, it was about a 4-point game, considering that Darius Perry just kind of threw up a 3 at the end that
was
happened
awesome,
to go
though.
in.
It was awesome.
It was awesome.
I mean, that shot, I don't think anybody thought that was going to go in. I mean, and it was one-handed too. He just kind of, underhanded it, like swung it to the side, and it just went. It was awesome.
And and by the time everyone listens to this podcast, they're going to either have already seen it or they're not going to be able to really look at it. But that shot will wind up on the Bad Beats segment of the SVP Sports Center tonight. I can guarantee it, because that shot changed the what would have been the under to the over, essentially. So that meaningless shot actually put him over the over of the game. And I realized that somebody tweeted that after the game. So I was like, yep, that's definitely going to wind up on Bad Beats.
Well, he was 3 of 10 from the 3-point line. So not very good shooting from the 3-point line.
Yeah, really. Brandon was the only one that was hitting it on a consistent basis. And unfortunately,
4 players over double digits, though. I mean, that's a big deal in double digits. 4 players. Yeah, Dre Fuller as well.
Exactly. Yeah, and we should talk about Dre more in general. Just he has had a good week. I think he's settled into his role now that Darius Perry is playing well over 35 minutes a game, from the starter. So he's Dre Fuller's coming off the bench now. He's doing a great job. He's using his size, his athleticism, and he had a good game today. Knocked down a couple of threes in big moments. But yeah, just kind of overall, with Darren missing a few big shots and some others, we just couldn't quite find it today.
Has CJ Walker kind of taken a turn and started to do things a little bit differently? 12-point double-double, 10 rebounds, 12 points. Has he kind of turned the page a little bit and a little bit more offense?
Yeah, and I think that Knights fans are like we're all kind of clamoring for him to be more than he's shown so far on the offensive end. Just because big 5-star recruit coming in here, we're expecting a lot out of him. I think that he accepted his role from the very beginning as being the energy guy, as being super athletic and trying to crash the boards and get putbacks and trying to catch dunks. And I think that potentially what you saw today is him being a little bit more aggressive on offense, but also just kind of excelling in that role that I just described, as opposed to him trying to do anything different. He was, a little bit more aggressive. I saw, when he took, the big center Chris Vogt off the dribble in the middle of the second half and got his 4th foul, I think, at that time on him on trying to take him to the bucket. So you've seen some flashes of him being a little bit more aggressive, but I like I've always liked what I'm seeing from CJ Walker, and you guys know from talking to me about it, and I've kind of not defended him all year because he doesn't need me to defend him, but just the amount of effort and energy plays and him using his athleticism. I think that's the reason why he's played not only started, but, played big minutes in almost every game because Johnny really likes him in that role. And I think what you saw today is him kind of excelling in that role, not necessarily trying to do too much, being a little bit more aggressive, but just excelling in that role of being that energy, that extreme athlete that he is, and just going up and getting it on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, Ben, I really think, to your point, you've seen a lot of progression in a lot of different positions. One of the big stats that always jumps out to me is our assists versus our turnovers, right? So our turnovers in the last few games have been way down. Our assists have been way up, which is always a positive. And, we talk about our 3-point percentage. We're actually number 2 in the American going into this game in 3-point percentage at 41%. And if you looked at the half, we were, within 1 point. There was a reason for that. I mean, the rebounds were 14 versus 10 assists. And really where Walker has really blossomed is starting to help with those rebounds, because Reynolds really didn't play in the first half all that much. So we didn't have a big presence, and you had Vogt that was out there, to your point. Mm-hmm. So attacking the basket was super important to get him fouled out. But I mean, talk a little bit about what the difference is there in turnovers and assists, and why that's so important for us, especially when we play low scoring games, when we clamp down on defense.
Yeah, I think that it was 2 or maybe 3 weeks ago on Knightline at Night that I pulled up the stats for this team, for our team, and I think we were in the bottom 10 in the country in assists per game, at a little bit under 10 at that point. And so certainly when you see 16 assists versus 8 turnovers, with the way that this team plays, you would have thought that we'd win going away. I don't care who we're playing with that type of ratio. I think potentially this is what the result of these types of assist games that we're seeing is really just this team getting more comfortable with each other on the court. I know it's kind of seems kind of simple and maybe cliche, but again, I mean, no off season, no preseason, a lot of young players and a lot of transfers. I mean, we're still getting used to playing with each other on the court. And I think that over the last 2 weeks where they've had to go on the road for 4 games straight, had to be on the road for 8 days in a row, and then coming back home and playing 3 games this week, one of which, traveling to Cincinnati and having to play on the road today after a game on Friday night. I think that they're just getting more comfortable on the court with each other and understanding where each player is at. And I think that the assist going up is just a result of that. And I guess also, along with some great practice time, I imagine the turnovers coming down is also a result of that as well.
Yeah, I was just looking at that, actually, the turnovers. The last 2 games here, not the third game, the beginning of the week. Well, actually, the Wichita, no, okay, yeah, so I'm all messed up. It's these stat sheets have the home team on the bottom and okay.
Right.
So I was trying to compare, but I may be wrong. In the last 2 games, though, I think it is, we've actually had better turnover statistics than we have lately.
Yeah, it's too. You were right in the beginning, Andrew. Where is the Wichita State game and today's game were the ones that we had our turnover. We had 17 turnovers against Tulane in a game that we won. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think at least 11 of those occurred in the first half, if not 12. So while Darren Green Jr. was just going off and kind of keeping us in it against Tulane in the first half, we did have some turnovers there that were just kind of ticking away and keeping them in it, quite frankly. But we cleaned that up in the second half against Tulane on Friday night, and certainly the game that occurred early this afternoon against Cincinnati. We only had 8 turnovers on the game in general. We only had 4 in the first half, I believe. And that we struggled, besides Brandon Mahan in the first half, we struggled shooting. We missed a lot of shots. And we gave up some easy buckets on their end on defense. Didn't have the best defensive performance in the first half today. And I think that because we didn't turn the ball over a bunch, we were able to stay in it and then make that run at the end of the first half to get right back in it and be down 1. So that just goes to show you, like, when we've experienced games like at Memphis for the first time this year, where we're just like throwing the ball to the other team every single play. When we've experienced games like that as UCF fans this year, seeing a game like today against Cincinnati where we're not necessarily playing very well on either side of the court as far as shooting on offense or really just giving up some easy points on defense, but we're able to stay in it because we're not giving them extra opportunities. And so that's the difference that, turning the ball over or keeping it secure can do to you.
Yeah, Cincinnati also, this is just a statistic that I saw here. Cincinnati in the second half shot 50% from the floor, which is pretty good.
Yeah, they started to light it up a little bit. Yeah, and that's what caused them to go on a few runs there that ultimately were the difference in the game. I mean, we kind of chipped away at it at times, but then they would pop another 6-0 run, like these little short ones. We shot
35 in the second half. They shot 50. So that makes a big difference. They had 48% for the game. We had 40% for the game.
Yeah, the whole theme of the Cincinnati game was just different than other losses that we've talked about on this podcast and on the radio show, like together in the past, right? Like this season, usually when we're not able to win games, it usually comes down to turnovers and, silly passes and, certain things that we're not doing well. But this game, I don't necessarily think that we were all that bad offensively as far as our flow. We were just missing shots, especially in the second half. And, sometimes that's going to happen.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Ben, thank you very much for all your insight. You've had a heck of a week. Congratulations again on that. And we will talk to you Tuesday night on Knightline at Night.
Sounds good, guys. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on as always. And we'll talk real soon.
Night Nation, I need to talk to you about something very near and dear to my heart. It's Tijuana Flats' new fajita tacos, available for a limited time. Grilled chicken or steak with fajita peppers and onions, garlic lime sauce, and guajillo chili salsa. Topped with cheddar jack cheese, crisp iceberg lettuce, and fresh pico on warm flour tortillas served with chips and salsa. We're talking good vibes and even better flavors from a whole nother plane of deliciousness. Available for a limited time either in-store or through their app and website for delivery or pickup. These aren't just fajitas. They're something better. True enlightenment. Fajita tacos. Available for a limited time only at your neighborhood Tijuana Flats. Welcome to the Tijuana Flats Hot Take of the Week. Visit TijuanaFlats.com for takeout or delivery, or visit your local Tijuana Flats. Tex-Mex for everyone. All right, time again for the Tijuana Flats Hot Take of the Week. Roger, what do you got?
Well, it's another exciting week of flaming hot takes from the Tijuana Flats Hot Take of the Week. And this week, it's about UCF basketball. So my hot take is going to be UCF basketball will contend for a conference title in 2 years. And here's why I say it. We're learning how to play together. The big question marks, obviously Perry is a senior this year, as is Mahan. So the question mark is going to be who steps up within that 2 year time frame. We have a couple of great guards that are coming in and one that should be back next year to help do that. And that's really the missing piece that we're missing. We've also got a couple of bigs coming in. So Walker's finding his way offensively. He's getting more assists. He's playing a lot better, and we're playing better together as a team in the waning moments of games. So for next year, will Mahan return? He has the opportunity. He's a senior as well as Perry. And then, obviously Johnny's going to be here. His contract runs through 2023 no matter what. I think he has 2 years, and I think we contend with Adams and all the pieces we have now, 2 years from now, we contend for a title.
Wow. Okay. Do you have a hot take on if Gus Malzahn is our head coach?
Well, it's like the Magic 8 Ball. All signs point to yes.
I got one. A hot take if Gus Malzahn is the head coach. We continue our winning ways and win the conference championship this next year with Gus Malzahn.
Ooh.
And his crazy freaking offense. Because I think that
he
he will turn it up. I think he will turn that offense up, especially with a guy like Dylan Gabriel that he has. I don't know if he's ever had a quarterback like Dylan Gabriel before. So that's my
Well, he's
take.
had more mobile guys, and they're usually bigger. So it'll be interesting, and it'll be an adjustment for him. Dylan doesn't move around the pocket as cleanly as some other folks do. And he hasn't really experienced any rollouts. So it'll be interesting, but that certainly is a flaming hot take.
It is a hot take, and I try not to do the hot takes very often, so that's why I leave it to you, but I wanted to put that one in there.
No, I think that's great.
We put the Ben interview in there that we recorded a little bit earlier because we were trying to find out a little bit more information, and Knight Nation is melting down a little bit. There are some people in Knight Nation melting down quite a bit about this. People are a little freaked out about this coaching thing, but I will remind you that he was an SEC coach. That's the exciting part of this. Another thing that's kind of interesting, it seems that we've gone a long ways if we're upset about getting a coach like Gus Malzahn. You know what I'm saying? A guy that has a national championship and was just at Auburn for the last 8 years. Like it's some kind of a step down for some reason. I guarantee you that this is a step up from Josh Heupel. And I liked Josh Heupel a lot. And I told you all I liked him. But I think this is a step up from Heupel, personally. So that may be another hot take. But we'll see.
So you're hitting the sauce bar quite a bit tonight.
I'm not been drinking one bit.
I meant the hot sauce bar at Tijuana Flats, man.
You just meant, I thought you were talking about I was on the sauce saying stuff like that. That's funny. Yeah. Well.
Oh man. See, Tijuana Flats, I'm always looking out for you. But seriously.
Speaking of Tijuana Flats, if you tune in on Tuesday nights on our radio show on WDBO 9 o'clock, we're giving away Tijuana Flats cash. We've been doing it on there. I'll probably bring some to Knightline as well at some point. A little harder to do on here. We can do stuff on Twitter and all that stuff, but we've been giving it away to callers. So if you call us, you may just win some Tijuana Flats cash, and that is it's a minimum of $10 to go and spend at Tijuana Flats. And you know, all the best UCF information comes from Tijuana Flats too.
100%.
Yeah. So all the stuff that Brandon has heard throughout and his reporting and Beatty and all that, it's all from Tijuana Flats, just so you know. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons I'm so excited to have them as a new partner, is just because I can go in there and just get, little tidbits every once in a while, and great food.
Yeah, listen, I've been going to Tijuana Flats since I went to school at UCF, and it's been around forever. The quality has not gone down. It's just as good as it was on day one, and it's a UCF. If you're a UCF fan and you've been there any length of time, you know who Tijuana Flats is. They're supporters of UCF. They're huge supporters of UCF.
Yeah, run by a UCF grad.
Exactly. So
absolutely.
We should support them. Not only are you doing the right thing by supporting local UCF alum, but it's also great food. So you're not giving up anything by going there. So go visit, go get the food.
Awesome.
It's phenomenal.
Awesome food. I love that place. One of my favorite places. Luckily, there's one right down the street from my house. It's very exciting. All right. What do we do next? I guess it's time for Ask Knightline, which is kind of going to be interesting after all this has transpired this evening. All right, let's do that. Ask Knightline is brought to you by Chad Barr Law. Chad is a UCF alumnus and diehard Knights fan. Chad Barr Law handles auto accident, slip and fall, and personal injury cases. Call Chad today at 407-599-9036 for a free consultation. That's 407-599-9036. Armor up and call Chad Barr Law today. All right, time again for your questions. You're asked on our Facebook page or Twitter at #AskKnightline. Brian W. Peterson says, what's the absolute first priority for our new head coach once they have been named? I don't care who it is. The first thing they need to do is get everybody ready for the spring because we're running a little bit late on this stuff. I've seen, some stuff on Twitter of other teams really getting in and going. He needs to get a staff put in and get everything set for the spring because that is really quickly approaching.
Yeah, especially since it could be a new offensive system for us as well. So if we don't have the carryover from Levy and we have someone like Gus come in, then you've got folks that need to learn a new system. You've got new blocking schemes. You've got all kinds of new things and new wrinkles that need to be learned. And that spring is going to be huge for getting up to speed and getting ready for the season.
And if it is Gus Malzahn, I would assume that he could do all that fairly quickly. He's done this before. He knows a lot of people, like I said. I think that's honestly the most exciting thing about him. He knows a lot of people. He probably knows some guys that don't have jobs right now. So that could be really exciting about him putting a staff together. And I think that he could do it very quickly. Probably already has it done, to be honest with you, if he knows that he's getting the job. All right. And go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if you get through the first round of interviews, the next one that they usually do is ask you to put together a potential staff and how much of a budget you would need for that particular staff. So, folks are being called and saying, hey, what would you take to come here? So I do think, to your point, that if Gus, and it seems like he was interviewed this past weekend, he's been making phone calls for sure.
Yeah, I would think whoever probably had the interviews and thought it went well has already been making phone calls. So, okay. The next one from Black and Gold Ed, and this is Randy Shannon. We kind of talked about this earlier. Randy Shannon is due to make $1 million next year. Should new head coach keep him? Or maybe he's the next head coach and we bring in a strong offensive and defensive coordinator. What's your take on Randy? We kind of gave this already. But heck, it's possible if they maybe Gus Malzahn and Randy Shannon get along. Who knows? Maybe he's the guy. Maybe he's not. I don't know if they get rid of Randy Shannon. I don't know what his buyout is. I mean, does he still get that $1 million contract or whatever's left of it for the year, or who knows about all that? Some of this stuff has to be a little bit financial. You have to think about that kind of stuff with the last year and the revenue loss and everything like that. So again, if this is Gus Malzahn, I think that some of that has to do with him getting that $21 million freaking buyout. And so maybe I'm not saying he's doing this for charity if he's the head coach. I'm just saying they probably got a heck of a deal for him. I don't know. I think Randy should go on about his way, personally. And I said that earlier. So don't let the door hit you, I think is what I said. That's my opinion on that.
Well, I do think, to your point, the financial situation makes a big difference. I mean, if you have Gus on an escalating scale, right? So basically prove your worth, but we have the luxury of doing that because he's getting back into coaching. He's got a high-profile job in UCF, and he's got he's got a $21 million buyout. He's not going to be hurting for money. It could be a way to offset if they did want to part ways with Randy Shannon. It would be a way to help offset that for cost, and also to help offset some of the cost for some of the assistants as they get filled in and moved up, because people don't think about this, but it's not just the head coach's actual salary. The assistant pool is a big expense as well. So if we can offset some of that cost by paying Gus less a little early and then escalating that as we move forward, especially with COVID and that $12 million loss being accounted for in there, then I think, I think it may be a financial decision for Randy altogether. I mean, he's going to get paid no matter what he does in his last year. He got paid from Florida. He's not hurting for money. The
His
question
kid's
is
not here anymore. I mean, one of the biggest things, and people don't remember, is his kid was a player at UCF, and that's probably the way he wound up here anyway.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. I mean, if Randy will be fine one way or the other. It's just going to be a decision of what he wants to do, and he's going to get paid one way or the other. It's whoever the head coach is. If Gus has someone he wants to bring in, and he wants that person to be the defensive coordinator because he knows the system, then I'll bring that in. Gus could also say, hey, let's give him another year to right the ship. And in the interim, it'll allow us the ability to have some transition between the two regimes. So that's going to be a conversation Gus and whatever Gus would feel comfortable with having if it's Gus Malzahn. If it's anyone else, I think that they are kind of stuck with Randy, at least for the year. If we brought in someone like Levy, I doubt that they would have moved on from Shannon this year. That would be up for debate the following year, just from a cost perspective, because we do have that shortfall, and whatever we get from Danny White and Heupel moving to Tennessee, which is to the tune of about $6 million, we can use that to help offset some of the losses that we took. So that's kind of how I see that situation. And I think if it is Gus, I think he takes a lower pay cut, and I do think we're more likely to part ways with Randy Shannon then.
Yeah. So all this is fluid, obviously, and we could be completely wrong about all of it. Wouldn't have been the first time. But anyway, so that's Ask Knightline. A couple questions in there. I think if this stuff would have been a little bit brewing a little bit more, we probably would have had a few more questions about that situation. So
yeah, we just didn't know the timing of when all this stuff, nobody knew the timing of when it would actually come out, some of this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's literally while we're doing the show.
Yeah, I like it when it does that, and then I don't like it when it does that, just because there's stuff. Okay, well, right here. The Sentinel now is reporting that UCF offers head coach job to Gus Malzahn.
There it is.
If you can take the Sentinel serious, because we all know about that.
Well, is it Bianchi or is it the Sentinel?
It's Matt Marshall that's writing it.
Okay, so Matt Marshall tends to be a little bit more fact-finding because Bianchi is more opinions-based. So
right.
If Matt Marshall is reporting it, then I would tend to lean that way.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, we'll see how quickly this moves, throughout. Well, we'll see. Hopefully hopefully UCF says something fairly soon. I guess I should check my email. I don't know if they usually don't send anything in the middle of the night, but
no, they wouldn't send anything until they had a presser set up.
Yeah. Well, maybe, you never know about setting that presser up if they're setting something up for tomorrow, but it doesn't look like they've said anything yet. So interesting. We shall see. All right. Well, that does it for Ask Knightline. What else do we got that you wanted to cover, Roger?
Just a few things to update Knight Nation on. We had a very successful Saturday and a day of winning. Women's tennis beats the U 4-0, so they beat UF recently. Now they beat the U, so cleaning up and cleaning house in the state of Florida. Women's basketball wins over Cincinnati on Saturday, 70-51, which was a phenomenal win. And remember, they were coming off some time off due to COVID issues as well. Men's soccer wins in the freezing cold in Temple. Literally, if you watch the game, there was a Temple player towards the end of the game who was trying to get the ball, overran it, and ran into a snowbank because it was plowed. It was 20 degrees in Temple. So it was quite interesting, but the men come away with the win. Men's tennis, unfortunately, had their match at Georgia postponed this week. Again, COVID issues there. However, they will host number 9 Texas and A&M on Wednesday. So again, men's tennis team, women's tennis team as well. Time to watch those teams, Knight Nation. We know that they've been doing well the past couple of years, but Roddick's really got them on a roll. So winning big games, and at least at the women's side, we're winning the state so far. So keep an eye on them.
All right, quick little break here, and we'll be back with news and notes.
I'm Jeff Allen. Join me each and every week on the Knightline Sports Network for the AAC Report. We bring you in-depth coverage of each school in football, basketball, baseball, softball, soccer, golf, tennis, and more, as well as bring you insider interviews and focus in on the biggest games and news of the week. That's all right here each week on the AAC Report, only on the Knightline Sports Network.
Hello, Knight Nation. This is Andrew Phegley reminding you to tune in every Tuesday night, 9 to 10 p.m. on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, plus the WDBO app for Knightline at Night. Brought to you by Chad Bar Law. We'll be taking your calls and your texts reacting to the previous week's UCF sports action, and you never know who will show up. Once again, that's Knightline at Night, every Tuesday, 9 to 10 p.m. on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, plus the WDBO app. Go Knights and charge on.
Welcome. This is a promo for the Take a Left at Albuquerque podcast, new to the Knightline Sports Network. You should listen to it. I say things like this. We need to stop blaming Jerry because we would do the exact same thing if we owned the Dallas freaking Cowboys. Do you know how much fun it is to own the Dallas Cowboys? My guests will say things sometimes like this.
It's the Lord of the Flies thing that happens when they don't understand that things are wrong. Spoiler alert, until Piggy dies.
Lord of the Flies has been out for like 100 years. I don't even know.
Yeah. Sorry to everyone at home who I spoiled the book for. A book's been out for like 90 years or something.
And sometimes, rarely though, I'll say really stupid things like this. If they don't make it out of the West and the Raptors get to the finals, I will go on either this show or whoever's show and say that Kawhi Leonard is overrated because I have too much evidence of it. New episodes drop every Friday with me and some of my good friends right here on the Knightline Sports Network.
And now, news and notes from the world of UCF sports.
The UCF women's soccer team earned its first victory of the season in their first match on the road with a 1-0 win over American Athletic Conference foe Temple. UCF controlled most of the attack in the contest, tallying 16 shots with 10 on goal. Temple managed to put 3 shots on frame, all saved by Caroline Delisle, while the Knights tallied 10 shots on goal. Trescott Chevlou, sorry if I'm messing that up, picks up her first assist of the year and her UCF career on Katie Bradley's second-minute goal. Mallory Olson's pair of goals is a new career high and marks her first multi-goal game of her career. Freshman Sarai Linder picks up her first collegiate assist after an over-the-top pass to Mallory Olson for her second goal of the game. Next up, the Knights will return to the UCF Soccer Complex to host Cincinnati on Sunday, February 21st at 1 p.m. Cincinnati's season opener was rescheduled due to weather, so this will be their first matchup of the 2020-2021 campaign.
Alrighty, well, at least I don't have any names in mind. Trace used to do this to me all the time, so now I can do it to you. All right, the number 21.
There you go.
Yeah, I messed up after I said that. The number 21 ranked UCF softball team could not have asked for a better start to the 2021 season. Lord have mercy. Than what they got on Saturday, coming away with 2 big wins over Florida Gulf Coast University in Fort Myers, Florida. The Knights, who were in action for the first time in almost a year following the cancellation of whatever. That's how I say it, cancellation.
That's all right. That'll work. Everybody knows what you mean.
of the 2020 season due to COVID-19. They exploded for 13 and 8 runs, respectively, while allowing no Florida Gulf Coast player to cross the plate in either game. The 13-0 game, one win. The 13-0 game, one win, was the largest opening day margin of victory in the UCF softball program history, in the 21st combined run, or 21 combined runs over the first two games are the most UCF has ever scored through the first two games of the season. Today, UCF won 8-5 over Florida Gulf Coast again. They've played 4 games with them. Next up, a weekend series with New Mexico State. So all kinds of other sports stuff going finally for UCF. Not just basketball, not just football. Baseball's coming along as well. So everything is good. All right, this has been kind of a weird one, but it's been Knightline 249. I'm Andrew Phegley.
And I'm Roger Phipps. Go Knights!
Charge on.
Charge on to the field. With our spirits we'll never yield. Black and gold charge right through the line. Victory is our cry. BSETO or Y. Tonight our knights will shine.